What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the final watch list video of the season, obviously for Game Week 38. I'm going to go through some of the players that I'm eyeing up ahead of Sunday's deadline. Obviously, we still got a few more matches to finish, but we're going to start talking and looking ahead to these players either way. So if you enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you are new around here as well. As always, this is based on my FPL teams. So any players I've already got are not on the watch list. I think obviously key considerations for me are Salah's availability come Sunday, and obviously we'll see tonight what happens. I think he's out, but obviously Klopp might give us a bit of an update and stuff like that. Possibly a defender transfer and strikers as well. I could change one of my bench strikers or even Nketiah to someone different. So they are kind of the areas that I'm looking at. Players like James and Alonso, ideally, I really want to keep if I can. But I'll talk about that more in the team selection video later on this week. So first player is Harry Kane. Now, Son is the obvious move to go for, right? He's the one that's been banging in the goals since Game Week 30. He's the one that I guess is in form, right? Got some massive hauls. In fact, I'm just going to remind myself right now just how ridiculous he has been, because I think he's only really been dealing in double-digit hauls since Game Week 30. So Game Week 30, 15, 12, then 21. Obviously, then he blanked twice. Then it was 19. The double game week was another double-digit haul, and obviously he blanked against Burnley as well. So this kind of run from Game Week 30 has just been absolutely crazy. And what better fixture to kind of round out the season than Norwich away? Now, I do have some very slight doubts in my mind. I think on paper this looks like an obvious win. They're not going to drop points at all. They're going to get into the top four. They're going to be in the Champions League next season. Harry Kane's happy, Conte stays, etc, etc. But there's that little doubt in my mind. Maybe it's just a perception thing, because a lot of people talk about is, will Spurs bottle this? Will Spurs do a Spurs and let Arsenal back into the race? I mean, Arsenal's fixture is obviously not that easy either against Everton. Either Everton will be safe and they'll be like just happy to play a game without the pressure, or they'll be fighting for their life, and then that could be an issue as well. But I think I've kind of got to forget about all the Spurs stuff and just think it's Norwich away. Spurs have looked good. Conte's got them performing better than I would say they have in a while. I looked at the expected data stats as well. They're starting to get close to Chelsea for attacking potential. They're almost the third best team in the league for expected goals. Obviously, Man City and Liverpool are ahead. Spurs are now right up there under Conte's management, and obviously how well Kane and Son have been playing. So there's not really a huge amount more to say. The reason I'm looking at Kane over Son is I just want that little bit of a differential. Obviously, I could easily just protect my rank, get Son in, captain him. That's what everyone's going to do. But I feel like on any given day, and I've said this for about 15 weeks, Kane could easily outscore Son, especially if a few penalties get involved and stuff like that. And I just have to hope that that's my day. It's the day where Son blanks again and Kane gets a double-digit haul, and I've obviously captained the kind of lower-owned player. That could also have the opposite effect and go really badly, and Son smashes it and my rank just further plummets. But I feel like I'm willing to take that risk. A lot of it's going to depend on other injuries, especially to Salah, because it would take a hit to get Harry Kane, so I would need to get some money out. But if I can kind of match that up with a punty midfielder with a good fixture, and then Harry Kane, who we know can be explosive, get points on his day, I feel like that's not a bad hit to take on the last day. I wouldn't be looking at kind of -8s, -12s. I think that's absolutely crazy in most cases. But for a captaincy, I think a -4 is okay. And for a little while now, like a few weeks, I have been eyeing up Harry Kane for captain on the last day. And I even thought about Salah out for a hit before he got injured. So the fact that he's now possibly a doubt, and even if he starts, he could have his minutes managed, that just makes it all the more enticing. So I really would love to have Kane for the last day. Obviously, I can make it happen. It's just whether I do. But he is firmly on the watch list. And for me right now, at least from an interest point of view, a fun factor, he's probably ahead of Son for me. So speaking of fun factor, I put out a tweet earlier today talking about the romance of Game Week 30. There's just something about it where you feel like any big gap can be closed. There's all these random players. You just feel like they're definitely going to haul. And we kind of forget about how we've selected players for most of the season because we're just chasing that big points title. There always feels like there's a defender that gets 18 points. You just got to try and get the right one. And Ryan Sessegnon is where I am looking if I need to bring a defender in, or if I need to bring someone in to get get a big chunk of budget because I've got very expensive defenders, right? I've pretty much got the big five: Trent, Robertson, Cancelo, James and Alonso. So if I sold any of them, especially the likes of Robertson, for Sessegnon, who's only 4.3 million as it stands, that's a lot of money to then spend elsewhere. So for example, I could keep Salah and get Son by bringing in Sessegnon and taking that hit. I'm very likely to take a hit this week, I think. I mean, I may end up just going really boring, Salah to Son and captain him, but I could take a hit as well. And Sessegnon's right out there. I just think, again, it's that fixture which Spurs look certain to win. The only, I guess, one thing I didn't mention when I was talking about Kane is it's the last home game for Norwich, at least for another season, right? Because we know they're going to be back up to the Premier League the season after next. So maybe they will try and dig in, give something for the fans. But I just think if they try and play, then that will suit Spurs. And if they don't, I think Spurs will have enough of ball where they'll easily end up scoring. I'm not saying they'll batter them. I think Spurs do still struggle a little bit with teams that sit deep. But I think they'll push their their wing backs on, the likes of Sessegnon. And his numbers are pretty good. Like 0.27 expected assists per 90. You combine that with his expected goals. That's 0.31. That's kind of right up there with the likes of Cancelo and players like that. This is obviously over a much smaller sample size because he hasn't played a huge amount of minutes this season because of injury and obviously Reguilon being kind of first choice for most of it. But that's still quite encouraging. And we know how much Conte likes to push the wing backs on, right? You don't need me to tell you all that. We've seen it with Doherty and players like that. So I really like it. Again, I think this is one of the fixtures you can almost bank on a clean sheet for. And if Spurs are going to score, yes, you'd expect a lot of the combinations to come down to Son and Kane. But if they've got a lot of the ball, the wing-backs are going to have to push on. And I would just trust Sessegnon a little bit more than Emerson Royal. It's not even really a price thing. Obviously, if it came down to it, I would choose the cheaper one if I needed the money for a move. But if I'm just taking both of them in isolation, I just think Sessegnon's just that little bit better when it comes to attacking potential. There's probably not a huge amount in it, but just having watched Emerson Royal, I always feel like his decision making and his final ball is not always great, even if he has maybe improved from a kind of defensive point of view over the last few weeks. So yeah, again, really eyeing up this fixture. One of the best fixtures you're going to get all season. Last day. The only, I guess, another slight thing, I almost wish that Spurs' top 4 place was fully secure or just not possible, so the reins were off. You know, so they just got free reign, no pressure to do anything. Like, if Norwich score, obviously it's not good to have Sessegnon, that might put a bit of pressure on. Suddenly get a bit of tension in the legs. You're worried you're going to let that top 4 slot, go by. You can see the goal, Arsenal go 1-0 up. That's a bit of pressure, and that might make Spurs play in a way they're not kind of used to. So there's all those things to think about, but ultimately, if Spurs get the early goal, it could be 3, 4, 5 goals, and I'd like to have a bit of that action. Because of that romance, right, because it's the last day, because you know this is the last chance to get points, there's a lot of players I like the look of this week, and I'm going to speak about even more on the transfer tips video tomorrow, but I'd really like a Chelsea attacker, if I can, for Watford at home. I just think, like, we talk a lot about, something to play for, giving their fans something to cheer about, like I've just done for Norwich. But look at Watford, their last home game, and they've conceded 5 goals to Leicester. Now they've got to go away to Chelsea, nothing to play for. They're already relegated. They're making a lot of changes at the moment. There's apparent injuries, illness, and stuff like that. Like, this is a great game for Chelsea. Now, obviously, you got that short turnaround time I've spoken about quite a bit. They're playing Leicester on Thursday, then they've got to play again on Sunday, along with everyone else. Again, there's nothing to rest players for, but who knows? There might be some kind of changes Tuchel makes. So we'll have to try and keep an eye out on what he says in press conferences, maybe if we get early team news and stuff like that. But Mason Mount very rarely misses out, which is why he would be kind of the number 1 target for me. I think Lukaku, obviously, but then it's Lukaku versus Kane versus Vardy, and it gets a little bit more difficult. In midfield, it's a bit easy. You just pick Mason Mount because he plays all the time. Like, I would have almost like to have kept Havertz for this, but obviously when he started possibly losing his place and then he's been out of the squad and stuff like that, you just can't go back there. I think if I really wanted to go punting on the last day and we got word that someone like Pulisic was starting, I'd be tempted to just take a massive punt on him because not many people would own him. But I feel like Mount is not super heavy owned, and he's still going to be not a differential, but not so highly owned that you don't care what he scores, and he could get a monster haul out. We've seen him do that a few times against some of the weaker sides this year. I think he got the hat-trick against Norwich and stuff like that. If he plays, there's points in this one for him, absolutely. And Chelsea's top 4 spot is done. As long as if they beat Leicester, I think their top 3 spot is also confirmed. I'd have to double check that. But either way, I think Watford at home, it's almost going to be like just free reign to go and do what you want. And Watford are conceding, they've conceded goals all season, But right now, with those injuries and stuff like that, I just think this is definitely a fixture to target. And the safest pick for the attack is probably Mason Mount, which is why he's right on the watch list. But like I said, I could be tempted into a bit of a pump. Pulisic is probably the one. I think he's got a bit more of an eye for goal than someone like Ziyech. Ziyech does like to shoot, but I think a lot of the times it's kind of long range. And if Havertz isn't playing, then the only other options are Werner and Lukaku, and they're both forward. So Mount's the obvious one, but I wouldn't completely write off Pulisic. So Ivan Toney also firmly on the watch list. Obviously a much cheaper striker than Harry Kane. I'm thinking about different eventualities because on the last day of the season, we're all thinking, okay, if we get early team news, that's great. I'll just have my pick of players to put in based on whether they're lined up. So like I said, if Pulisic starts, maybe I put him in. If Salah doesn't start, I swap him out for someone else. So I'm trying to think of different strategies depending on who's playing. But also, it might change my strategy depending on who's missing out. If suddenly I've got 2 defenders or 2 midfielders that aren't playing, I might have to change my strategy, and it might not be just to get Harry Kane in. It might be that I need a cheaper forward. So that's why Tony's on, because of that Leeds at home game. Now, his numbers haven't been fantastic all season, really. I mean, just over what, 0.45 expected goal involved. I just had to do the maths there. I don't know why I didn't do that beforehand and have it ready. Is okay, but his expected goals, his goal threat has not been that high. But we know he has penalties as well. The reason, of course, for putting him on the watch list is that Leeds at home fixture. It looks great. Now, a lot of how we think games are going to go last day of the season is going to come down to which teams have stuff to play for, and more importantly, what kind of pressure could be on. So I've spoken about the Spurs pressure if they go behind or Arsenal go ahead, for example. With Leeds, it's completely different. It's all about staying in the league. Now, Burnley, at the time of recording, have still got to play Villa on Thursday in game week 37. And whether they win or lose that, I don't think it really is going to take too much pressure off Leeds. Obviously, if Burnley lose, and then the word comes through last day of the season, they're like 1 or 2-0 down, that maybe relieves a bit of the pressure, but it's not like Leeds can just kind of stop playing. And I don't think they've necessarily got the capabilities right now to just hold the ball either. So I think they really are going to struggle against Brentford. And if you think about Brentford, they're absolutely safe. 46 points. They're in 11th place. They can still get top 10. I don't think Thomas Frank is going to let them off. I think it's going to be a party atmosphere for sure. But they're going to know what's at stake for the relegation battle. And they're also going to know what they could possibly do to Leeds as well. Like, there could be a fairly big score in it for Brentford if Leeds do collapse. Now, Leeds could obviously still stay up with a loss if Burnley lose their last 2 games, but there's a lot of pressure on that game, and I think Brentford, are going to get a lot of chances. And obviously, you want the main man up front. Hopefully, they continue with him, obviously straight through the middle with the 2 wide players in Vissa and in Mbomo. Of course, how could I forget his name? And I just think you want that guy that's through the middle, the focal point out front, which is Ivan Toney. So yeah, if I need someone cheaper, I think he's the one that I'm looking at. Obviously, we talked about forwards a lot over the last few weeks. There aren't a huge amount of options. I don't necessarily think that Nketiah is a bad option, but if it's between him and Toney this week, I think I prefer the Brentford man. So that's my watch list. Let me know below what you think. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I will do a transfer tips video tomorrow as well, where I probably will talk about a few more punts. Obviously, we've got the Liverpool game tonight, so I want to wait until that's happened just to see if Klopp says any more about Salah, and I can talk about him tomorrow. Then we've got game week preview, team selection, race to world #1, and then deadline stream on Sunday, as well as a watch along and an end of season stream as well. So triple header on Sunday. If you have enjoyed the content this season, first of all, thank you very much for supporting me and watching the channel. I might do a whole video on that, but I really do appreciate it. Please do keep giving the videos a like if you enjoy them. Hit that subscribe button as well, and I will catch you again tomorrow.